Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. I just wanted to make a quick midweek update video talking about the National Weather Service grids, which is the forecast lesson that you are learning this week. And I want to use that in conjunction with MOS, which was the lesson from last week. And I want to show you how to use them together in order to get a consensus or to get an average what different weather models are saying so you can create a better forecast. So since most of the East Coast is dry right now, there really isn't anything going on. What I wanted to do is I wanted to find somewhere in the country where there is weather going on. And for right now in southern Arizona, it is their monsoon season, which we'll talk about monsoons later on in the course. But for right now, they're projected to get some rain and thunderstorms overnight tonight and into tomorrow. So I showed you how to use the National Weather Service grids, but I also want to use it in conjunction with MOS. And so let's say that I was going to create my forecast for tomorrow and for Friday. One of the neat tools about using the grids is that, and I like to use the charts, just because I find it to be a little bit easier for me. You might actually like the digital display, which would be the map, but I like the actual grids themselves shown like this. And so, you can click on temperature, dew point. So I don't, maybe to clean this up a little bit, I don't necessarily need to know what the thunder is. Sky cover, I really don't need to know. And relative humidity, I guess I really don't need to know. So for right now, that is. So let's say I wanted to create a forecast for tomorrow that was valid tomorrow at midnight. So I can do a 48-hour period starting tomorrow. So let's say I was going to create a forecast for tomorrow and for Friday. And so here, this is a lot easier than looking at MOS, I do agree. So the high tomorrow projected would be about 68 degrees according to this. The low, which would occur early Thursday morning, would be about 53, 52 degrees. And then for Friday, it looks pretty similar. The low would be right around 50 degrees and the high is right around 71 degrees. So both days are pretty much the same in terms of temperature. And we see here the winds are coming out of the south. And we haven't really talked about how to go into learning about wind barbs, and that's coming up later on in the course. But for right now, the winds here, they're right around 5-10 miles per hour. And they're essentially coming from a southerly direction simply because these wind barbs are pointing downward. They're facing a south direction, so north, south, east, and west. So if they're pointing down, they're coming from a southerly direction. So I'm not going to dwell on that for too much, but you will want to learn how to figure out wind speed and wind direction, but that's a lesson for later on. But what I'm really interested down here is the amount of precipitation. And how do you figure out the amount of precipitation? What you can do, one method you can do is you can add up all these numbers. So if I wanted to figure out how much rain was going to fall between Thursday at midnight and Friday by midnight in that 24-hour period, I would add up 0.17, 0.05, 0.10, so 0.10, 0.2, and then probably about 0.2 and cut it off there. So for rain tomorrow, we're looking at, let's see, 0.27, 12, so about maybe like 0.3 of an inch projected according to this. Now, this forecast is for a town called Prescott, Arizona. It looks like Prescott, but they pronounce it Prescott. And this is out of the Flagstaff, Arizona Weather Service office. So this is their forecast for the Prescott area for Thursday. And as we can see, as we go into Friday, there's some slight chance for some showers around. As you can see, the precipitation potential chart, there's a pretty good chance of precipitation for tomorrow, Thursday, and then drops down drastically going into Friday. But they do show some showers could be around throughout most of the day, so there'll probably just be a mostly cloudy but overall dry day. So one of the things that we can do here is that we can see what MOS is thinking. So I went to the Arizona tab and I clicked on Prescott, and I'm going to go to the bottom and I'm going to go submit this. And so what you notice here is that for September 26, which would be tomorrow, you can see that the high for September 26 is right around 70 degrees. This 79 would be today's high, Wednesday's high, the 25th. The low tonight would be around 55 according to the GFS version of the MOS. And according to the NAM version of the MOS, the low is also expected to be right around 55. And if we use the grids, we can see that they're projected to have a low of about 52. So if you want to take an average of 55 and either 53 or 52 and call it a low of 54, that would be a pretty decent way of figuring out a low temperature for your forecast if you were forecasting for this area for Thursday. So you already know what the low is going to be. Now the high for tomorrow is expected to be 70 according to the GFS and 67 for the NAM MOS. And as we can see here, the high for tomorrow is expected to be right around 68 degrees. So the grids are leaning a little bit more towards the NAM version of the MOS rather than the GFS. But again, a 3-degree temperature difference really doesn't mean that much. If you want to make it a nice middle way point and call it a high temperature of 69 for tomorrow, you absolutely could, and that's fine too. But what I really wanted to point out here is your quantitative, or how much precipitation has fallen in a 6-hour period and a 12-hour period. So this is what the Q6 and the Q12 means. It's how much precipitation has fallen in a 6-hour period or a 12-hour period. Now, if you wanted to sum up the entire day, what you could do here is you could look at the Q12 category, and you can see that they have a category of 4. So that means that the category 4 amount of precipitation has fallen. And if I remember correctly off the top of my head, and it's in the MOS training, that the category 4 in terms of MOS for precipitation ends up being between 1/4 and 1/2 an inch of accumulated rainfall. And so what's interesting here is that on your actual weather forecasting form, you have the drop-down list, and the drop-down list actually corresponds with the different categories. So if you wanted to take MOS's word verbatim as a category 4, meaning that between 0.25, which is 1/4 an inch to 1/2 an inch of precipitation, would fall in between midnight tomorrow through about midnight on Friday, then you could actually use the drop-down arrow on the Google's Forms where you submit your forecast, and you can actually select the 4th category, which corresponds to the 1/4 to 1/2 an inch of precipitation that has fallen. So I set it up that way just to make it easier. Now here down in the NAM MOS, now the NAM MOS, they're pretty much agreeing the same thing. So we're looking for about 1/4 to 1/2 an inch of precipitation to fall. Well, if you remember when we summed up all of these rainfall amounts for tomorrow, we ended up averaging about 3/10 of an inch. So 3/10 of an inch falls between 1/4 an inch, which is 0.25 inches, and 1/2 inch, which would be 0.50 inches. So pretty much the forecast for tomorrow is most likely in agreement. You know, we're looking at a low of about 54, 55, and we're looking at a high of just below 70. And I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, there's a little bit of peaks of sun that come out and we actually tip the bucket to hit 70. However, with the amount of rainfall in the forecast, it looks like, you know, if it's not raining all day, it certainly will be cloudy throughout most of the day. So I think, you know, staying below 70 would probably be my number. So I would put in a low of about 55 and a high of about 69. And I would say that for precipitation for tomorrow, I would say that, you know, the category 4, I would select the, you know, the 1/4 an inch to 1/2 an inch precipitation amount. So that's how I would look at the forecast for tomorrow, and you can apply the same concepts for the forecast for Friday, but that's how I would look at MOS, and how I would also take that into consideration with the grid. So over the next couple of weeks, we're going to learn more and more about weather forecasting. You're going to learn more and more tools, and I want you to use all these tools and build upon all these tools And these are going to help you create better forecasts. And the more familiar you are with all these tools, the better your forecast will be, and the easier time you will have when you complete the final project at the end of the course. So we still have a ways to go in the course. We're already on week 3 and time does fly fast, but I thought that making these videos every week, showing you how I would use these tools and basically bringing them all together, helps you kind of figure out what you're doing and helps you become a little bit more familiar with the information and the material. So that is your midweek update for this week. I hope everybody has a great rest of the week, and if you have any questions on anything, please feel free to reach out and let me know.